Alright, this is Ryan Turner once again from vwdiesel.net. Today we are going to be changing an oil cooler O-ring. This happens to be in a Mk4 2.0, but it is the same basic procedure for a Mk3 AHU, a Mk2 turbo diesel, a Mk1 turbo diesel, pretty much any four-cylinder diesel motor, gas motor, with an external oil cooler. This does not include the AHU or anything new, or the ALH or anything newer than that. But this is AHU and older. So anything Mk1, Mk2, Mk3, Mk4 2.0 with an oil cooler. They like to break a lot of times when it gets that really first cold snap of the year. The O-rings get old and brittle and they start cracking into little bitty pieces. So it's good. This car right now actually isn't leaking, but I'm going to change the crank position sensor. But while I'm there, I'm going to place the O-ring because it's 2 more steps, and it's just insurance against anything happening. You know, you get out somewhere and it breaks, leaves you on the side of the road. You drain all the oil out through the crack in the O-ring, and your motor's blown. I've seen that happen time and time again. So it's really great to do this procedure when there's nothing wrong with it, versus having it happen to you at the worst possible moment, at the coldest time of the year, and leave you stranded. This is the new oil cooler O-ring. A lot of the factory ones didn't have these 2 little teats on them. They actually go on the top of the oil filter housing, or the oil cooler, and seat into the teats that stick off the housing. Okay, so this is an oil cooler that I had sitting around. You can see here is the O-ring. And the teats that I had mentioned, the O-ring just pops onto those teats to hold it into place. And that way you can slide it back up on the oil shaft. More on that in a minute. Here we can see the oil filter and the oil filter housing and oil cooler. This up here is your oil cooler that the oil filter snugs up against. And on the other side of that is the oil cooler O-ring that always cracks, that seals between the oil cooler and the oil cooler flange. Our first step, we are going to take off the oil filter, and then we will remove the nut for the cooler. The oil filter is now removed, and you can see that it still continues to drip a little bit of oil. It's always good to have a nice drip pan below to help clean up so you don't have to have a big mess on the floor and have kitty litter. The nut is a 27 millimeter nut. That just, any standard, what I'm going to use is a 12-point, 27 millimeter half-inch drive socket that just slips over it. You remove that nut, and then you are able to pull the oil cooler assembly down to get the O-ring off. Alright, you can see the nut has now been removed from the oil filter flange nipple, and we can just pull the oil filter housing, or not the oil filter housing, but the oil cooler down, and it will, with a little bit of work, come right off. And you can see the oil cooler O-ring right there. Now on Mk3s and Mk2s, this might be a little bit harder to do with the hoses going the opposite direction. Another thing that you can do is get a pair of needle nose vice grips and spin that long nipple out to where it's easier to get the oil cooler down. Sometimes you can take the hoses loose. That's a lot harder and you lose coolant. But just work at it and you can get the oil cooler off, or you can take this nipple off. It just simply unthreads and get a little bit more access that way. We're going to take a pick and pick this off, unless I'm lucky enough that my fingernails can do it. Doesn't appear so. And then simply we will take that O-ring off, we will put the new one on, we will lightly coat it with some grease to help it stick and help it seal up. Put the oil filter housing back up on the nipple. Tighten the nut up to the torque that I will post in this video for you. And then simply retighten the oil filter. And that is how you replace your oil cooler O-ring in a Mk4 2.0 ABA, AHU, 1Z, MF, ME, stuff like that. This is Ryan Turner. Once again, thanking you for watching our repair video. If you need parts for the repair procedure, if you need an oil cooler O-ring or whatever else you need, please feel free to visit the links accompanied at the show notes or at the bottom of this video. Our good friends at fixmybw.com will be able to help you, and their kind and courteous staff will be able to give you any kind of support that you need, answer any kind of questions that you have. Please feel free to check us out at vwdiesel.net. And if you need any videos or want to know how anything's done, please leave a comment below this, and we will be happy to help. Thank you.